A world divided, the dawn of the Cold War, the Cold War. It was a time of tension, a time of mistrust. The United States and the Soviet Union, once allies, became rivals. This wasn't a war of bombs and bullets, not directly at least. It was a war of ideas. Capitalism versus communism. Democracy versus authoritarianism. The Cold War emerged from the ashes of World War II. The two superpowers, the US and the USSR, had different visions for the future. The United States sought to contain the spread of communism. The Soviet Union aimed to expand its influence and promote its ideology. This rivalry played out on a global stage. It influenced everything from politics and economics to culture and sports. The world watched, holding its breath, as these two titans circled each other. The Cold War was a time of fear, but also a time of resilience. It shaped the world we live in today. Understanding the Cold War is essential to understanding the complexities of the 20th century and beyond. Rebuilding Europe, the Marshall Plan and Western Recovery. World War II left Europe devastated. Cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered. The United States, recognizing the need for stability, launched the Marshall Plan in 1948. This ambitious program provided billions of dollars in aid to war-torn European nations. The Marshall Plan was not just about rebuilding infrastructure, it was about rebuilding hope. It was about fostering economic growth and stability in Western Europe. The plan was a success. It helped to revive European economies and strengthen ties with the United States. The Marshall Plan played a crucial role in the formation of the European Economic Community, a precursor to the European Union. It demonstrated the power of economic cooperation and laid the foundation for decades of peace and prosperity in Western Europe. However, the Marshall Plan also deepened the divide between East and West. The Soviet Union saw it as a threat, a way for the United States to exert its influence in Europe. This suspicion would contribute to the escalation of the Cold War. The Iron Curtain descends. The Soviet response, COMECON. The Soviet Union, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, viewed the Marshall Plan with deep suspicion. Stalin saw it as a ploy to undermine Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. In response, he established the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, or COMECON, in 1949. COMECON was the Soviet bloc's answer to the Marshall Plan. It aimed to promote economic cooperation and development among communist nations. However, COMECON operated very differently from the Marshall Plan. It emphasized central planning and state control of the economy. While the Marshall Plan offered aid with few strings attached, COMECON's assistance often came with conditions. This often involved aligning their economies with Soviet needs and priorities. This approach hindered economic growth in many Eastern European nations. The creation of COMECON solidified the division of Europe. It created an iron curtain between East and West, further fueling tensions and mistrust between the two superpowers. Section 4. Alliances forged, NATO, and the Warsaw Pact. As the Cold War intensified, both sides sought to strengthen their positions through military alliances. In 1949, the United States, Canada, and 10 European nations formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. NATO's founding principle was collective defense. An attack on one member would be considered an attack on all. The formation of NATO was a direct response to the perceived threat from the Soviet Union and its allies. It marked a turning point in the Cold War, solidifying the division of Europe into two armed camps. The Soviet Union viewed NATO as a provocation. In 1955, the Soviet Union responded by creating the Warsaw Pact. This alliance brought together the Soviet Union and its satellite states in Eastern Europe. The Warsaw Pact was the Soviet Union's counterbalance to NATO. It solidified the military division of Europe and heightened tensions. The existence of these two opposing military alliances increased the risk of conflict. Any direct confrontation between NATO and Warsaw Pact forces had the potential to escalate into a full-blown nuclear war. Section 5. Conflict on the Korean Peninsula, a proxy war. The Korean War, which erupted in 1950, became a major testing ground for the Cold War rivalry. After World War II, Korea, previously under Japanese rule, was divided along the 38th parallel. The Communist North, supported by the Soviet Union and China, invaded the South, backed by the United States and United Nations forces. The Korean War was a proxy war. The United States and the Soviet Union never directly engaged each other in combat. Instead, they fought through their respective allies. The war raged for 3 years, resulting in millions of casualties, both military and civilian. The Korean War ended in a stalemate in 1953. Korea remained divided, with a demilitarized zone separating North and South. The war had a profound impact on the Cold War. It intensified the arms race and deepened mistrust between the superpowers. The Korean War also demonstrated the devastating consequences of proxy wars. It highlighted the dangers of Cold War rivalries spilling over into direct conflict.